Good morning, my daughters. How are you today? Today is Wednesday, 7th of October 2020. Today, inshallah, we are going to take reading. We are going to read about detective stories. We are going to read about a detective writer. She used to write detective stories, okay? And mystery stories also. Now, look here. Bring your books and your pupil's book, of course. Open your books, page 19. We are going to take reading, write the date and the day up, okay? We are going to explain the pictures, who are they? But first we are going to look at number one. Look at the title of the text and the pictures that go with it, okay? We're going to read the title and the pictures. Work with a partner, guess what information appears in the text. Now, before we start, look here. We're going to read the title and we're going to look at the pictures, then I'm going to go with you to study skills. But as the question asks us to read the title, we're going to read it. The interesting case of the mystery writer and her world famous detectives. Now, as you can see, I think this is the writer. She is Agatha Christie, and this is Hercule Poirot. He's a famous detective. He was one of her famous characters, okay? And Miss Marple also, she's one of the famous characters in Agatha Christie's mystery stories, okay? Before we start, look here. Why it is useful to look at pictures and the title of the text before you read. Please open your books 146. We are going to read a small paragraph about this one, okay? This one, the small paragraph. Please follow me with your finger. Before you read a text, look here, we have a reading prediction. Before you read a text, look at the pictures or photos that go with it. When you look at the picture, you'll feel that you know what are you going to read about or what is the text about. Read the title of the text too. This also will help you. This can help you to think about the topic of the text and to predict some of the ideas and words in it, okay? This can help you to understand more when you read the text for the first time, okay? Now, when you looked at these pictures, you saw that this is Agatha Christie. She is a very famous writer, known that she used to write mystery stories, and she has some detective also stories, okay? When we saw the pictures, we predicted that this text is about detective stories. It's about detective characters or detectives in general, okay? Now, we're going to start reading. I'm going to read first. Before we read, I'm going to ask you these questions because during or after I read for the first time, we're going to answer these questions. Okay? These are pre-reading questions. First of all, who was Agatha Christie? 2. Where did she find her inspiration? 3. What were her interests? 4. Who were her two famous characters? 5. What was Poirot's problem? 6. Was Miss Marple a typical detective? Number 7. Where did they find Agatha Christie? Okay? I'm going to read for the first time. Please follow me. After that, I'm going to read paragraph one by one. Then we're going to answer the questions. Deal? Now. The interesting case of the mystery writer and her world famous detectives. Agatha Christie was a writer of mystery stories. She had an interesting life. She was born in 1890 and died in 1976. During that time, she wrote over 60 detective novels. They translated her books into about 103 languages, and they say that she sold more than 4 billion copies of her books. Her books still sell well today. Okay? Christie found inspiration for her stories at unusual moments. Sometimes ideas suddenly came to her in a shop or walking along the street. She also loved traveling and was interested in archaeology. She visited many countries including Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Jordan, and Turkey. These places inspired many of the events and characters in her stories. Okay? Christie's two most famous characters were Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. Poirot was a Belgian detective. He solved cases by examining the crime scene very carefully. He looked for footprints and fingerprints and collected evidence very careful. He also investigated the life of the victim too. This helped him to decide who the main suspects were. His only problem was his stomach. It often gave him problems. Okay? Now, Miss Marple was not a typical detective at all. She was an elderly British lady. She always seemed to find herself in the middle of a crime scene by accident, okay? And almost everybody around her was a suspect. Miss Marple questioned all the suspects one by one. The reader could analyze all the evidence to decide who did it. Of course, clever Miss Marple always solved the case correctly in the end. The reader isn't always so lucky, okay? Now, Agatha Christie didn't get tired of Miss Marple, but she got tired of Hercule Poirot. In the 1940s, she wrote two special novels and put them away in a box for 30 years. The novels were the final cases of Poirot and Miss Marple. Just before she died, Christie made the books public. The New York Times wrote about the death of Hercule Poirot as if he was a real person. Interestingly, on one occasion, Agatha Christie herself appeared in a newspaper story. She suddenly disappeared from her home in 1926. The police searched for her for 11 days. People were worried about she was in trouble. Okay, people were worried that she was in trouble. It was like a scene in one of her detective novels. Where did she go? When they found her, she was on holiday in a hotel in the north of England. Okay, Mama, now I'm going to read the paragraph, explain it, and answer the question. Now, Agatha Christie was a writer of mystery stories. Okay, who was Agatha Christie? She was a writer of mystery stories. Do you know what do you mean by mystery stories? They are stories that we don't know who did the action or who did the crime or who killed somebody or who killed someone. Okay, we have some events that they are not clear for us, they are not obvious for us, they are mystery for us. Okay, for example, someone stole a ring or something, we don't know who's the one who did this action, okay, or who stole the ring. Deal? Now, she had an interesting life. She was born in 1890. Now we are going to talk about her life, and died in 1976. During that time, she wrote over 60 detective novels. These novels were translated into 103 languages, okay? And they sold for they sold for her books for more than 4 billion copies of her books, and her books still now they are sell well very well today. Okay, now Christie